My topic is the Coal Development Act of 1976, or the Presidential Decree number 972 as amended by PD number 1174. The name of this decree is uh, promulgating an act to promote an accelerated exploration, development, exploitation, production, and utilization of coal. So uh, we will first know what is coal. So a coal is a combustible black or brownish black sedimentary rock composed primarily of carbon, formed over millions of years from the remains of ancient plants. It is a fossil fuel created under intense heat and pressure from burial under layers of dirt and rock. So cla- coal is classified into different ranks like lignite, sub, bituminous, and anthracite. Coal is used as an energy source for electricity generation and industrial processes, though its combustion has significant environmental impacts. Ah, so what is the rationale behind the law? First is to promote accelerated coal development. It's stated in the whereas clause of this decree. So, uh, the primary goal was to intensify and speed up the entire process of coal development from initial exploration to production and utilization. Next is to encourage private sector participation. The decree aimed to draw in private companies and their expertise, technology, and capital to undertake coal operations. The decree also uh, aimed to introduce a service contract system. So PD 972 established the Philippine Coal Service Contract System, a structure for coal operations that incentivize private involvement and service provision. This also developed to develop a national coal program. Uh, this created a structured program dividing the country into defined coal regions and exploration blocks to organize and facilitate development, and also to provide a framework for coal operation. It established guidelines for how coal operations would be conducted, including the preference for existing permit holders to consolidate their areas into larger units for operating contracts, and to incentivize private operators. So, operators would receive incentives through a system of production payments and reimbursement for their expenses in return of their service, technology, and financial backing. The legal basis for this decree is Article 17, Section 12 of the 1973 Constitution of the Philippines, and it provides that when the national interest so requires, the incumbent president of the republic or the interim prime minister may review all contracts, concessions, permits, or other forms of privileges for the exploration, exploitation, development, or utilization of natural resources entered into, granted, issued, or acquired before the ratification of this constitution. So, Section 1 of the Coal Development Act, Section 1 is of the Coal Development Act is the short title, which is Coal Development Act of 1976. Section 2, Declaration of Policy. It is hereby declared to be the policy of the state to immediately accelerate the exploration, development, exploitation, production, and utilization of the country's coal resources. A coal development program is therefore promulgated and established by this decree. Section 3, Coal Development Program. The country shall be divided into coal regions, and exploration and exploitation programs shall be instituted and implemented pursuant to this decree. Based on Section 3, the Philippine Coal Service Contract System was introduced, and this system established the appropriate guidelines for coal operations. Under these guidelines, the government of the Philippines retains ownership and control of the coal resources, with private operators carrying out exploration, exploitation, and development activities under contracts. So, Section 4, the government to undertake coal exploration, development, and production. The government, through the Energy Development Board, shall undertake the active exploration and exploitation of coal resources by itself or through coal operating contracts. So the exploration and exploitation may cover public lands, any unreserved or unappropriated coal-bearing lands, areas covered by valid and subsisting coal revocable permits, coal leases and other existing rights, and coal mines or coal mineable areas operated or held by government agencies. The blocking system. The Energy Development Board shall establish coal regions, delimiting its extent and boundaries after taking into consideration the various coal-bearing lands of the Philippines. So each coal region shall be divided into meridional blocks or quadrangles of 2 minutes of latitude and 1.5 minutes of longitude, each block containing an area of 1,000 hectares more or less. These regions include Cagayan, Ilocos, Central Luzon, Bondok Peninsula, Bicol, Catanduanes, Samar, Leyte, Cebu, Negros, Panay, Mindoro, Agusan Davao, Surigao, Cotabato, and Zamboanga. Section 6. Coal Contract Area. The Energy Development Board shall determine in each coal region what areas are available for coal operating contracts. So coal operating contracts are contracts entered into by the government with private entities to explore, develop, and produce coal on its behalf. In opening such contract, the EDB or the Energy Development Board may either offer an area for bidding, specifying the minimum requirements and conditions in accordance with the decree, or negotiating with a qualified party for a coal operating contract under the terms and conditions provided by this decree. So no person shall be entitled to more than 15 blocks of coal lands in any coal region. How this works. The EDB designates specific areas within the coal regions as available for contracts. And then these areas are then offered for exploration through coal operating contracts and are awarded through public bidding or negotiation. And the coal operators undertake the exploration and development of these coal blocks. A sample is of the coal block is the Semorara Island in Antique. So there are 12 blocks as shown in in the picture. The coal blocks as the Semerara Mining Power Corporation has 12 blocks. Existing permittees or leaseholders. Section 7 grants preference to existing permittees and leaseholders for coal operating contracts over their currently held areas, provided they meet specific conditions. So they must organize their areas into coal units, comply with existing permit and lease requirements, and convert these into coal operating contracts until January 27, 1978, as provided under PD 1174, and to avoid automatic cancellation and reversion to the state So a coal in the since a block will be a subject for a coal operating contract, if there are more than one operators with existing permits or leases where the block is located, these operators should consolidate themselves into a coal unit, provided that a coal unit shall not be entitled to more than 15 blocks of coal lands in any coal region. So, for example, prior the making of this decree, there are already existing leaseholders or small coal miners. So they have already these uh, permits to mine, but with the with the creation of PD 972 and the with the enforcement of the blocking system, so their area where uh, they they are mining would be uh, divided into blocks. So when if there are more than two uh, companies who have a permit and their area is within the same block, they should form into a coal unit for them uh, to have a coal operating contract within that specified block. Um, Coal operating contract. Each coal operating contract shall be executed by the EDB and subject to the approval of the President. In a coal operating contract, service, technology, and financing are furnished by the operator for which it shall be entitled to the stipulated fee and reimbursement of operating expenses. Accordingly, the operator must be technically competent and financially capable to undertake the coal operations as required in the contract. And the financial capability is determined by the EDB. Obligations of operator in coal operating contract. Section 9. Under a coal operating contract, the operator is responsible for exploration and investigation, development and extraction, financial and technical support, and work program compliance. In the exploration and investigation, this involves examining coal-bearing lands through methods like core drilling and geologic mapping to determine the presence and extent of coal deposits. In the development and extraction, steps to reach and extract coals are taken, including sinking shafts and tunneling, and the subsequent extraction and utilization of the coal. Financial and technical support. The operator provides all the necessary services, technology, and financing required for the coal operations. And in the work program compliance, the operator performs work obligations and programs specified in the contract. While the government oversees the management of the operations under the coal operating contract by first is requiring compliance and monitoring work obligations. In requiring compliance, the government uh, ensures that the operator provides the necessary financing and technology, as well as compliance on submission of reports and maintenance of technical records, and allowing inspections and access to equipment sites and financial documents. In monitoring the work obligation, the, the government monitors the operator's performance of the prescribed work obligations and programs. On the other hand, the EDB shall reimburse the operator for all operating expenses up to 90% the annual gross proceeds from coal production. Any excess expenses beyond that limit can be recovered from future years' operations. So let's say in a given year, the operator the annual gross proceeds from the coal production is 100,000 and the operating expenses 100 million, and the operating expenses of the operator, let's say, is 93 million. So only up to 90% or 90 million uh, of the proceeds will be uh, re- reimbursed to the operator, while the 3 million, the excess of the expenses will be recovered for the future years. Uh, Operating expenses include all costs incurred as defined in the coal operating contracts. Section 10. Additional fees. Section 10 outlines the granting of a special allowance to coal permit and leaseholders in addition to the operator's fee. So aside from the operator's fee, there are special allowance given to the operators in view of the coal operating contract. If number one, for existing coal permit or leaseholders or qualified operators organized into coal units, they may receive up to 40% of the net income as a special allowance. So the net income means the gross minus the operating expenses. For other Philippine citizens or corporations with coal operating contracts, they may be given up to 30% of the net income. If a coal if a coal contract has at least 40% Filipino participation, a special allowance of up to 20% may be granted under certain conditions. So in this as in this decree, a Philippine corporation is defined as one with at least 60% Filipino ownership, including voting shares. Section 11, the minimum terms and conditions. So for minimum exploration spending, the operators must spend at least 1 million per coal block annually on exploration. So if the area is suitable for open pit mining, this may be reduced to 200,000 per block annually with agreement from the EDB. So in the development and production, once commercial reserves are confirmed, the operator must begin development within the agreed time frame. Required development spending will be negotiated with the EDB based on several factors. So, flexibility in work obligations. Operators may focus spending on select blocks if it benefits the operations with the board with the approval from the EDB. Excess spending in 1 year can be credited to future years. So as explained kanina. Work obligation. Penalties. If the operator fails to meet spending obligation, it must pay the shortfall or deficit to the government. Drilling requirements. At least 30 holes per block must be drilled unless it is an open pit mining. So the board may allow fewer holes based on technical factors. Exploration period. Initially set at 2 years, but extendable by another 2 years if obligations are met. The contract ends unless commercially viable coal is found. If coal is found, the contract continues for development and production for 10 to 20 years, renewable every 3 years for up to 12 more years. So in the exploration period, the uh, the operator is still looking for in the coal block if it has coal or viable for coal mining. So that period, the operator has 2 years, 2 year period, and extendable by another 2 year. If and then if the coal is found, the contract continues for the development and production phase, which is 10 to 20 years depending on the coal operation contract. And also, this contract will be renewable every 3 years for up to 12 more years. So it will be renewed for 4 more times for a period of 3 years. Property rights. Movable equipment left in the area a year after contract termination becomes property of the Energy Development Board. So once a contract, coal operating contract has uh, terminated or ceased, the operator must take the movable equipment from the site, or else uh, after a year upon termination of the contract, the the said equipment will become property of the government. Compliance: the operator must follow general labor, health, safety, and environmental laws unless these conflict with the decrease provisions. Full disclosure of interest, Section 12. Domestic mining companies and their shareholders can have any interest in coal operating contracts, but full disclosure and approval by the EDB are required. Arbitration. Uh, the EDB can include arbitration clauses in contracts to settle disputes between the government and the operators. Performance guarantee. Section 14. Operators must provide a bond or guarantee to ensure they fulfill their contractual obligations with terms approved by the EDB. The transfer and assignment, Section 15. Transfer or assignment of contract rights and obligations need prior EDB approval and can only be made to qualified parties who can continue mining operations and have met contractual obligations. So, Section 16 provides the incentives to the operators. So, para maengganyo ang mga private companies to uh, mine coal, one of the incentives is tax incentive. So the operators are exempted from paying all taxes except income tax. And second, the importation of duty exemptions, import duty exemptions. So no tariff or tax on imported machinery, equipment, and material if not locally available, directly used in operations and approved by the EDB. So the equipments, machineries, and materials that are uh, imported are free of tariff or tax. And also, restrictions apply on resale or disposal without EDB approval. So since the equipments are free of tax, to avoid risk, kumbaga, maging causehan tax evasion na i-resale na lahiya. So there are restrictions. Restrictions apply on resale or disposal without EDB approval. So it should, for the operator to be able to dispose or resale the equipment, which is has undergone importation without any tariff, it should be approved first by the EDB. And the violation of this provision would result in double tax penalties. So instead of, uh, for example, if originally the tax imposed in the machinery or equipment is, let's say, $1,000, the operator will be paying $2,000 since he resold the equipment without the approval of the EDB. Accelerated depreciation. Operators may depreciate assets faster than normal to reduce taxable income with options based on asset life and prior notice to the BIR. Foreign loans. Right to remit foreign loans payments and technical assistance obligations abroad following the central bank rules. And priority in government loans. So Philippine-owned operators get priority access to loans or investments from government financial institutions, example BDP, PNB, SSS, GSIS, subject to their charters. Foreign personnel entry. EDB can approve the entry of foreign technical experts, but preference must be given to qualified Filipinos, and operators must also run training programs for Filipino workers. Entry and use of private lands. Coal exploration and development is declared for public use. Operators can enter private lands after written notice. If the landowner refuses or is unavailable, the operator must notify the EDB and post a bond. So for compensation, the titled lands, at least 1 peso per ton of coal extracted plus payment for damaged properties. So this will be given to the uh, owner of the private land. Untitled incomplete titles, at least 50 centavos per ton plus compensation for damages. And for government reserve lands, open for co-contracts with shared compensation between the supervising agency and EDB. Timber rights. Operators may cut timber within the coal area following forestry regulations. If the area overlaps with an existing timber concession, terms must be agreed upon or decided by the EDB. Operators must also reforest the area. Water rights. Operators may apply for water rights needed for operations following existing water laws. Existing water rights are protected and the government retains control over equitable water use. So penal provisions. The penal provisions from Presidential Decree number 463 or the Mineral Resources Law apply to coal operations with references updated to Presidential Decree number 972 and the EDB. So as a that we can scan the penalties stated in Presidential Decree 467 or 463. So the illegal extraction of minerals, extracting or disposing of minerals for commercial purposes from government land or a private claim without proper authorization is a valid violation. False statement and misrepresentation. Destruction of mining markers or structures, interference with operations and officials, pollution from mine waste, delay in payments, arson and willful damage. So in general, penalties for violation of PD can include fines, imprisonment, confiscation, and surcharges. So the Section 17, incentives to coal users. Tax-free imports, no taxes or duties on machines and equipment needed for conversion if approved. So the machineries and equipments used the uh, for the mining of the coal would be exempted from tax. So within 7 years. But this is subject to approval and conditions. Domestic purchase incentives, 100% tax credit on the value of taxes that would have applied if imported. So if buying locally instead of importing, companies get a tax credit equal to the taxes they would have paid. So instead of paying taxes, they can have a tax credit which can be used to be deducted in their taxable income. Loss carryover. Companies can use losses from the first 10 years of conversion to reduce taxes for the next 6 years. In capital gains, no tax on profits for selling assets for the conversion if the money is reinvested and kept for 7 years. So faster depreciation. Companies can write off equipment costs more quickly to lower their taxes. Foreign loan allowed companies are allowed to send money abroad to pay for approved foreign loans and technical help. Easier access, priority government loans. So high priority access to loans from government banks and agencies, but only for Filipino-owned companies. These incentives are administered by the Board of Investments, which will also approve conversion plans and enforce the rules. So Section 18, the implementing agency. The Energy Development Board is responsible for enforcing this law and has the power to create rules and regulations to implement it, except for incentives under Section 17, which are handled by the Board of Investments. The agency initially tasked with implementing Presidential PD 972, also known as Coal Development Act of 1976, was the Energy Development Board. The Department of Energy later took over these functions and is currently the primary agency responsible for overseeing the exploration, development, and utilization of Philippine coal resources under the provisions of PD 972 and subsequent laws. So here are a list of active and subsisting coal operating contracts as of February 24, 2025 here in the Philippines. So we have uh, the locations.
Mr. Anthony,
Yes. Yes.
um, would you be amenable to continue your report next
Okay. Oh, yes.
meeting?
Yes, attorney.
Medyo halaba pa, no?
Ah, duha na lang ka slide.
Duha na la.
Oo,
Sige.
duha na lang. Sige ba? So those are the
Sige,
list.
laban.
So in the list of active and subsisting coal operating contracts, the Semirara Mining and Power Corporation is the largest coal producer in the Philippines, accounting for the vast majority of the country's coal production, with some sources stating it produces over 90%. So SMPC operates the country's largest coal mine located on Semirara Island in Antique and has integrated its mining operations with its power generation facilities. So does the Philippines still import coal? Yes, the Philippines still imports significant amount of coal as domestic production falls short of the nation's high demand for power generation and other industries. In fact, the Philippines imports more than 80% of its coal requirements and relies heavily on it for electricity, making it one of the most coal-dependent countries in Southeast Asia. The primary sources for these imports are Indonesia, Vietnam, and Australia. So did the domestic production of coal help the Philippine economy? Yes, coal has historically helped the Philippine economy by providing a cheap and reliable energy source, fueling industrialization and economic growth, and supporting local employment through mining and power generation. Though its contribution to the GDP is relatively small. However, the reliance on coal, particularly imported coal, exposes the economy to price volatility, creates high electricity costs for consumers, and poses significant health and environmental risks, leading the country to shift towards renewable energy. Okay. That is all done.
Kaya ano importante it coal ha Philippines, Mr. Anthony?
Uh, Coal was used as a fuel as a fuel source for uh, the it was used as a fuel source to used for the um, used in the generation of electricity as well as in the production of other materials.
So
So
basically,
uh,
ginagamit hiya ha aton mga gasolina na sugad.
Pag-create po han aton gagamit hiya iton mga power plants to create han aton electricity. So hadto nga time kun ang coal kasi is mas cheaper hiya kontrahan crude oil which is mas mahal. So naging alternative hiya nga gamiton han Philippines kay may daman naton nahibaruan nga ang Philippines is may the mga coal regions nga pwede gamiton.
Can the Philippines survive without coal?
So now uh, uh, usually nowadays ginagamit talaga kasi attorneyhan pag generated electricity is dependent on Philippines a coal kay asa man iton mas cheaper and iya cost pag generate han power. So the Philippines will not be as of now diri pa kita makaka-survive nga without coal kay asya taton primary source iton power generation.
Alright. So basically, Coal Development Act does not prohibit the use of coal. It's more of
It
um
encourages.
the correct. Correct, that's correct. And also the healthy development of coal nga diri ya makakagubaha aton environment. So do we have an alternative? Does the law provide alternative for coal development?
uh, Actually no, it does not. It the purpose of the law is uh, to promote or to encourage private sectors to uh, ano
Venture.
oh yes, to have called mining ventures.
All right. So does the class have any question with regard to the Coal Development Act?
Yes, Sir Sandos.
Actually, lagas na hiya nga law.
Oh,
Yeah, mapayapulot, Sir Anthony. Just a few points for clarification lang. You have made mention a while ago regarding the mga provisions and um, coal companies and coal operators, which you made mention that they have been in the priority of government loans with the mga import tax exemptions.
yes.
Then, na-mention yung mga accelerated nila mga depreciations on their assets, tama pa, mga tax incentives, capital gains exempt. Haimo perspective, why is the government being lenient or in favor? Magkamay dahil partiality mga coal operators na yung mga hindi nga mga about hindi nga coal uh, with respect to other entities hindi nga nagbabayad itong tax. Ano ba itong kaya ano ba nga bintagan niya rahil sugad na klase in favor itong government? Just a bit of clarification. Thank you.
So iniya nga incentives ginhatag ang government kay para ma-encourage ang mga mga private companies nga mag-invest mag venture hini nga ah, iton coal mining kas iton waray man technical know-hows ang government mismo So needed nirahin private entities nga may dahiton nga technology, knowledge o technical know-hows para uh, makapag-develop and makapag-producehan coal. So gintatagan niran operators incentives na okay ba, Sir Sandas?
Thank you. Parang naiintindihan ko na nga. Tagan nilang priority para kay ang coal mountain, ang mga coal mines, nakaka-generate with electricity, which nakita ang, as you have said, with, 80% ating coal na import pa natin. Thank you. I'll just clarify na ako. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions po?
I would like to comment on certain issues related to the development of coal industry in our country, because I have come to read that there is such a moratorium when it comes to application. I think issued in the year 2020 for the application of new coal mining projects in the country because of the environmental impact of this kind of projects in order to generate power source. Now what is being pushed by the government is to come up with alternative sources of energy instead of focusing on the coal mining industry. Except of course for those with approved already existing permits. So I think though there is this law, there is a need for us to create a balance between having a sustainable source of power or energy with that of the impact caused by our coal mining industry, especially when it comes to the degradation of our ecosystem, because, for example, of the so-called environmental pollution caused by these coal mining industries. Because we have to understand, I think that coal industries contribute about 20% when it comes to greenhouse gases because of the emission generated out of the operation of these industries. So that is just my point.
Thank you, ma'am. Any more? No more, thank you.
And before we conclude our classes,